Hello, hey, how you doing? Congressman Tim Ryan here. Uh, we are coming live. Sorry, we're having some difficulty, but I think we're good now. We're coming live. We're here back home in the Mahoning Valley. I'm at my house, so you may hear kids and dogs and all kinds of background noise. But we wanted to really open this up and chat a little bit with all of you about what's going on. And I think. Governor DeWine here has been doing a really good job of getting information out every single day. I think it's important that, we try to communicate with all of you as much as we possibly can. We've been home since Saturday morning. We had a vote at 1 a.m. Where we passed the bill that was basically, the first step we had was to actually get some money down to the states around the vaccines, around the virus, making sure we had research money, trying to get some level of equipment out to back up, what's already been a diminished supply, pass. Then the next step was how do we deal with kind of a little bit of the economic impact that's happening in the country because of the coronavirus. And basically, the economic piece was also part of the public health piece because you may have heard in the bill, was paid sick days for everybody in the country up to 2 weeks, paid family and medical leave, and several days available there. And so it was basically saying if you get sick, where many of us come from, people go to work sick because they can't afford to miss out. And so we wanted to make sure that if you got sick, you could stay home and still get paid. That's a social justice issue, economic justice issue, but it's also a public health issue. So we extended unemployment insurance, made sure enough food got out to the local communities for all the kids who are going to be home. I know in Ohio, kids are able to go to a stop and pick up about 5 days worth of food. So it's kind of based a little bit like the summer programs that they have for feeding kids that are out of school, pretty much based on that. So I wanted to take some of your questions because it sounds like the Senate just passed our bill. It sounds like the bill that Congressman Ro Khanna and I put forth last week, which was a bill to infuse cash payments into the economy to workers. Is something that the president is now considering up to $2,000. Ours was up to $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a month for people, but we'll gladly take 1,000 or 2,000 as we get started here. So anyway, we are now moving forward to the next phase into really understanding. The Secretary of the Treasury is saying that we are going to have potentially a 20% unemployment issue, 20% unemployment rate here. And so we've got to act quick. We got to act fast. And I'm going to start taking questions here in a second. But I just want to say, I believe that we need to act quickly. We need to act boldly and we need to be innovative. And that means we can't I don't think this is a $1 trillion issue. This has got to be a $2 to $3 trillion economic package for us to stem the tide at all. And if we're going to keep things going, we saw the market fall again today, projections of 20% unemployment. I've been out and about talking to some of the, and on the phone, talking to some of the people who own restaurants here. Devastating. So I want to start taking some questions that are flying in here. Federalizing, should we federalize, Robbie Todd, should we be federalizing all labs around the country in order to get way ahead of testing? Well, we've got some private sector people that are involved in the testing now too, LabCorp and others that are really helpful. We probably should have got to the private sector labs a lot earlier. I'm not going to get into a whole diatribe about how this thing was fumbled from the very beginning and the fact that the leader of the country was calling it a hoax, got us behind the 8 ball. There'll be plenty of time for that. This is about us coming together and trying to figure this stuff out. And so, there are essential. Why aren't county workers staying home? There are, every office, every county leader, they're going to have to make decisions on their own as to can you go to work and it still be safe? Can you have enough space, to practice the social distancing? And if you can, you can probably still go to work. And again, if you're working for the county or you're working for the Department of Labor, and we're talking about, making sure that we are able to get people their unemployment insurance claims. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be asked to sacrifice, ourselves included. I think we need to go back to Washington and start dealing with this too. And it's going to be 435 people in the House of Representatives to meeting in a closed space to try to pass legislation. But I think that it could be very important. We're all running to the grocery store and seeing the people sitting there checking us out in the cashier aisles. We're going to be putting forth, but they're sitting there in the middle of the public. People are walking in and out, and when everyone else is told to hunker down, they're in the middle of the public. I think those people should be getting hazard pay. I think those people should get another $5 or $10 an hour by participating in trying to keep us all safe and keep the wheels moving while we have so many challenges. I also think we should let a lot of these retail workers buy into the Medicare program, making sure they have adequate coverage. In retail, if you're working at a pharmacy, if you're driving the food truck, to making sure that we have enough food at the grocery stores. These are now hazardous jobs, and I believe that some of the intervention should be pay them hazard pay. Let me add, Aaron's, why is Congress not doing tele meetings? Hi, Buck. Buckeye just get in. Babe, Buckeye's in here. Sorry. Buckeye always comes in at inappropriate times. But they need to make sure that the vote would be protected. If you're talking about telemeeting, there are constitutional issues where we would actually have to go back to Congress anyway and vote on this. I kind of like what Mitch McConnell's talking about doing. It's really spreading out the vote, extending the length of the vote, so that people can walk in at different times. You can maybe break it down alphabetically as you walk into the chamber and have a few minutes to cast your vote, and then back out and let somebody else in, and making sure that the voting machines are clean and all that. I think there's a way for us to do it. So anyway, thanks. I'm getting a lot of people commenting on the dog. I should have let you at least seen Buckeye, but anyway, this is kind of the new normal, and I hope we go back. I think that again, this is going to be very, very important for us to make sure we keep coming. Let me try to get another. Okay, the issue of masks on healthcare workers. This is a huge issue. I mean, this is part of the reason. We have a lot of healthcare workers. There's a shortage of masks. I'm hearing a lot about this. We put money into that the $8 billion to make sure we could try to get more masks, more gowns, more protective equipment, more PPEs. The people on the front lines of the healthcare, they're making huge sacrifices here. And I know how worried they are and scared they are. We can't thank you enough for all the work that you're doing. We sent some money. We want to try to get more of those there. Part of not being prepared really is not being ready to have the equipment. We'll also be releasing in the next week too a proposal on how we reshore a lot of the stuff that we've lost. Now, my district obviously is Northeast Ohio. A lot of the people commenting here are from around here. We've lost millions of jobs to China over the years. And now we know that 80% of the component parts of components to prescription drugs come from India or China. We see all of this medical equipment that we don't have here because we don't make it here. We will be putting forth a proposal on how we reshore a lot of these industries, especially around public health, and how we maybe open up super low interest loans to partner with the private sector, with government loans to build facilities here, convert these old auto plants and different plants that have closed into making ventilators, making these masks, making these gloves, making the gowns that are needed, and then making sure that the medical equipment's here, making sure that the components needed and the elements needed for prescription drugs are made here in the United States. This talks, there's a broader conversation after this too, is how do we talk about getting our defense industrial base back into the United States. We're making things again here and putting people to work here. So anyway, we've got a lot of people making these sacrifices. People working in the labs are making these, making this happen too. Seniors who have to take controlled prescription drugs have to go to a doctor once a month. That rule should be waived. That's Jenny Duncan. That's a good point, Jenny. My staff's paying attention to this too. We want to get your ideas on some of this stuff so we're able to really push this up. But that's a good idea. I think there's going to be a lot more telemedicine and all of that happening a lot too. Private health insurance next year, costs and deductibles. This is going to have a huge impact on private insurance next year. We have to wait and see. Again, we were kind of trying to just stay focused again on the immediate need, making sure we're focusing on getting the resources down to the locals at the local hospitals in Akron. I just had a call the other day with people, leaders of the hospitals in Summit County, talked to the county executive there. We're really trying to stay in touch. So when we have to make these changes, we're going to be able to do this. So people are asking me to say to everybody, if you're sick, stay home. This is the one thing you've heard a lot of the experts talk about, that people are worried, people are scared. But what do we have control over? And the one thing we have control over is what we do and where we go, and whether we wash our hands, whether we do the elbow bump, whether we stay home or limit our exposure to the extent we can. I've had this conversation multiple times with my mom, who's in her mid-70s and has had some health issues. Stay home. We're trying to get her food, do her grocery shopping, run down food to her when she needs it, because she just can't. She's too vulnerable to be able to go out and do that stuff. So we're trying to help out, but we have control. And that you guys have probably all seen the big curve, the spike that can happen if there is a problem, and that completely overwhelms the healthcare system. But if we reduce the spike by staying away from each other primarily, we can thin that out, smooth that out. Let's see, people who are disabled and on Social Security going to get $1,000, whatever amount is decided, or all households. It's going to be all households that make under $130,000 a year, from what I hear from the president's proposal. $1,000 or $2,000 looks like it's going to be more like $2,000. And everybody who makes under $130,000 a year, even if you made no money last year. And I believe, I've not seen, because the Treasury Department's going to put this out, but I believe it's going to be retirees as well. But I'm not positive about that, but I think it may be. Not all employers will let you stay home even if you're sick. I've been sick since March 1st. This is Michelle, and I was expected to be at work. Those are some of the things we're trying to address by having the paid sick leave. And, obviously there's going to be issues around employment here that we've got to pay very, very close attention to. We've got a call yesterday in our office about somebody who was sick. I believe they were a security guard or something. And, the reality of it is they had issues with their employer. We don't know all the facts of it, but this is something that is a real problem. We've got to shut the country down for 30 days. We can't spend our way out of this pandemic to get rid of this virus. Yes and yes. I think we are in the process of slowly shutting the country down. The border to Canada, most recently, Ohio's been progressing, I think, way ahead of the curve. And let me just say, I think Governor DeWine's doing a really good job. And it's important that Democrats like me are working day to day with Republican administration here. Politics set aside, and we're doing the best we can here. But, so you've got to limit contact. Schools, public places, bars, restaurants, Today it was barber shops and hair salons. The movie theaters have all been closed here in Ohio, and obviously the restaurants. So limiting exposure, but we also need this influx of cash because those workers who were waitresses and waiters and laid off from here or there, the local restaurants, the catering businesses, those people are going to need some money. And so, the reality of it is we want them to be able to pay their mortgage. We want them to be able to pay their car payment. I believe we're continue to have conversations, and we need to have some really big conversations about the banks being involved in this, about the auto companies and auto loan companies being involved in this. We should be delaying all the student loan payments. I mean, these are things that are pretty basic. Are we going to get taxed by the state and local municipalities? I don't think we are. I don't think these will be tax-free payments. I don't have Corona, but I'm staying at home. I missed it. It's going quick. Small business owners who cannot apply for unemployment. Well, we're hoping that in this next package that the Senate is beginning to craft and we're going to be a part of in the House. And they're talking about a $300 billion package for small businesses. This has been the one thing I've been trying to push up into our House leadership. We have to take care of these small businesses. We've got to take care of these restaurants. We've got to take care of these bar owners. We've got to take care of these people who are working. They need cash, and we've got to get the money down to them. They don't necessarily want a 30-year SBA loan. If they're forced into that, they may have to take it, but they need some. They've lost a lot of money for parties that they've had to cancel, and obviously St. Patrick's Day and the weekend and March Madness and all of these ways that people made money. We've got to make sure that that money is available. And again, we can't get into some big bureaucratic mess. We've just got to making sure we get that money down to our local people. The service industry needs money like healthcare. Communities do. Yeah. But will we repay it next year on our taxes? No. I mean, everything that's coming out of the administration right now about the $2,000 check is that it would be tax-free. You wouldn't have to claim it next year. I see someone there from Vernon's local restaurant here. I was just talking to Vernon earlier today and yesterday about the impact. The local gentleman and his wife own two restaurants in our area, one in Niles, one in Youngstown. Huge catering business. Two $200 or 200-person parties canceled. A 50-person party canceled. And so this is the impact that's happened. They had to lay off 80 people. If you're unemployed, do you get the $2,000? I think the answer to that is going to be yes. We're getting a question about the 1099 issue. These cash payments to me need to go to everybody because we don't want to leave anybody behind. We don't want to leave the people who are filing 1099s behind. We have got to take care of everybody. So we're trying to. Some guy said $1,000 isn't enough. That's not quite how he said it, but I agree. I mean, my plan with Rokana is to make sure that people are getting $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a month based on your income, even more than that. I think we've got to make sure we're taking care of people. I was around in 08, 09 when the banks got the bailout, and I think this one, the first thing we've got to do is make sure that we get the money to the workers and the small business people. And we can also take care of the banks and take care of some of these other people as well. But like the airline industry, they want a $50 billion aid package. Look, we want to loan them the money, fine. But at the end of the day, for the airline, let me just say this: there's a lot of workers there in the airline industry, and it's important work. It's dangerous work. We appreciate their work. So we want to make sure we're helping the workers in the airline industry. But the airline industry got a huge tax cut, huge corporate tax cut. They spent 96%, the airline industry did, 96% of the money they got from the corporate tax break, they spent it on buying their own stock back. So it didn't go to the workers. It didn't go to, build new this or new that or create jobs and all the rest that everyone was saying. They bought their own stock back to inflate their own stock so the executives could sell their stock at a higher price and make a lot of money. Now they're the first one in line with their hands out saying, hey, we need more government money. So that is not exactly how we want to operate this thing. Thank you. Thank you. Got some nice comments here. Thank you. Thank you. Trickle down doesn't work. I hope that this is part of a broader conversation that we can have in the country around trickle down economics. And I won't take too much of your time to say this, but the whole idea of when the economy was doing really well, we cut taxes for the wealthiest people in the country. And now we have a huge hole, $1 trillion a year hole in our annual country's deficit. That's just piling up, $1 trillion. And so normally back when things were normal 50 or 60 years ago, and we had good economic policy, when the economy was doing really well, we would raise taxes on people, primarily the wealthy, set that money aside. When the economy went on a downturn, we'd take that money and spend it on stimulus money, roads, bridges, putting people to work. She would soften the edges of the economics up and down. And so what happened with President Trump and President Bush did this as well, that the supply side economic theory is cut taxes whenever. So we cut taxes in good times, and now here we are. We also didn't necessarily let interest rates get up as high as they needed to go. And so here comes the downturn, here comes the tragedy. We need money to spend, and we don't have it. We need to cut interest rates, and now it's already down to zero. So I question Social Security people get a check. I believe so, but I'm not convinced. Again, the Department of Treasury is coming out with how they're going to do this. My position is everybody under 130 grand needs to get something. There is talk about student loans. We are pushing. I know I'm for one am pushing, and I think a lot of others are in the Democratic caucus to delay the student loans payments. I mean, we can't ask people who are losing their jobs to keep paying their student loans. We're also going to need to talk to the banks and the auto companies, as I've said. Yeah, Emily Walter, no question, the public health emergency really is how many of our frontline public health workers are at risk. I mean, they're really literally on the front lines. And that is something that, again, we weren't prepared for. And we know, again, I'm not going to go into, blaming anybody, but the reality of it is we were warned. We were not prepared for this for a variety of different reasons. The president got rid of his office, part of his National Security Council that dealt with pandemics. Right out of the gate, they were briefed on something like this could happen. We weren't prepared. I mean, that's it. Question about Northside Hospital here in Youngstown. We are having conversations right now about potentially getting in the North Side as an opportunity to have some backup if we get overflow in Youngstown. So we want to make sure that's taken care of. As well, planning ahead of time, hopefully 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time of being able to absorb. I know there's conversations now in the state about using a lot of these dorms at colleges and universities about being able to quarantine people, which could be, again, a good use of resources if none of the kids are at school. Let's see. 3D, that's an interesting question. 3D printers at the Youngstown Business Incubator be used to make ventilators. That's a great question. My staff's on. Let's follow up on that and see if we can get that moving. independent contractors, again, like under my plan, you would be eligible to get the cash infusion if you make under 130,000 a year. So this is something that we want to keep going here. Non-essential businesses throughout the state. Ryan Poland's asking, what about closing non-essential business? I think a lot of those are really. I'm trying to think of who's left open. I saw GM and Ford is closing down, and so it's just day by day, more and more. No limit to how many people are grocery shopping. We were just having this conversation, my wife and I, about how do we incentivize the grocery stores to do the shopping and create more of a drive-by environment, and then how do you do that where you can't necessarily order online, but you got to get the products out as far as what's available, and working with seniors. So there may be something around there, though. We're beginning to have those conversations. And I know a lot of the grocery stores do that already. Prayers for the man in Austintown. Yeah, there was a heartbreaking article today in the local paper about a 40-year-old in Austintown, just outside of Youngstown, who is now on a ventilator. And since March 9th, he was feeling sick, and I believe he has 3 or 4 kids. And but again, we're talking a lot about thinking that the target age is 60, 70, 80. And then we hear today, more people in their 40s. We're hearing more people in their 50s. There was a 2-year-old today that the Department of Health in Ohio was talking about. So, it's not just, as a 46-year-old, you first hear of it and you think, well, okay, I'm all right, my kids are all right. And then you learn about the contamination, and that you can carry it. And our kids, we don't let the kids go see the grandparents, and try to keep them, corralled into the house the best you can. A 17 and 16-year-old here. Yeah, well, showings of a house. Somebody asking about showings of a house within real estate, and I guess if you're doing some protections with social contact, I'm sure that's got to be your call. 401k investment advice. It's crazy. I don't know. I mean, a lot of people would warn you from getting out of the market now because you lock in your losses if you've kept it in for the last few weeks. So that's above my pay grade. There are talks about rent and utility, making sure that people don't get their utilities turned off. We got a notice today from Dominion that they are not going to shut anybody down, and they're going to reconnect people. see Brady going upstairs. They're going to reconnect people. He's playing Fortnite. He's Xbox Live. But they're going to reconnect people too, I think, Dominion. So I think people are starting to, try to really prevent the closures because they know everybody's going through it. And I think we really want to make sure that everybody's taken care of too. You're welcome. I'm proud to do this. Thank you. Getting Vernon's takeout tonight. I'm a cook there. All right, Chris. That's the other thing, for those of you who are eating out, I know, everybody's kind of getting squeezed here, but we do want to support our local restaurants. And so to the extent, if you have a few extra bucks to get a takeout from one of the restaurants, I think it's really important. We've got a lot of really good ones in Northeast Ohio, but if you can spare it, it's going to be a big help. Trying to help out these local business owners. Here's the thing for a lot of them is that we, if they go completely under, it's going to be very hard to get them back up and running. And so we want to do everything we can to help them. I think that I saw someone asking about the tax returns. I think there's a 90-day delay. A 90-day delay. People who are paying their bills get what? Under my plan, there would still be an infusion of money to workers who make less than 130,000. And if you're paying your bills, again, I'd like to see us delay student loan payments, delay auto payments, delay mortgage payments to the extent we can, to make sure that everybody's doing okay. My eyes are really getting bad, guys. Buy gift certificates, that's a good idea. The question about Rokana and my bill, yeah, we're pushing it hard. I mean, it's been gaining traction. Then I think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez came out for it. Mitt Romney came out for it. Republican Senator Tom Cotton came out for $1,000. So it's moving in this direction. We just want to make sure it's robust enough. Tax payments are delayed 90 days. I'm not sure about the filing. We'll check that out. All of these questions that we get, we'll push back out to you. Abolish the IRS. All right. Yeah. Lori Rogers, $1,000. Yeah. It's not nearly enough. Hopefully they're saying 2,000, which it's great, but it can help someone get through a month. And then hopefully, we can keep it rolling. So we'll take a few more questions here. I'm posting thank you. Yeah, both sides coming together. I just want to reiterate that my office has been in constant contact. Either me personally, I've probably either texted or talked to Mike DeWine for the last 10 days. And my staff is in constant interaction with his regarding all kinds of different issues that we're facing. As I said, I had a call with some of the leaders in Summit County, the Summit County hospitals, who gave me recommendations that I make sure get directly to the governor or his head of public health. Constant communication, Republican governor, Democratic member of Congress. Those labels mean nothing when you're dealing with something like this. So I want everybody to know that, look, we each are coming together to make this thing work. Yeah, I agree. Donald Elks, I think it was about the airlines. Yep, crazy. 96% of their tax cut went to stock buybacks. That's tough. Mobile testing, they're really starting to speed up mobile testing. They're doing it a lot more. I know they're starting it in Cleveland. They're starting it in Summit County. A lot of this is based on the tests. And we've got to get more tests out, which we're continuing to do. You see Governor Wine closing the borders. I'm not sure what his plan is with the border. Very worried about rest of the school year. I know around special ed. I know. I mean, this is brutal. Andrea, my wife, is a first grade teacher, and she's working and trying to get her kids lessons and all that. But especially with special ed, really, terrible. So hang in there. Closure of factories. Will Mike DeWine close factories? I'm not sure he's there yet, but like I said, GM and Ford both have closed down. So yeah, 1,000's not enough. Yeah. Nicole Marie, what is the plan for small businesses? Again, this $300 billion, my preference is straight cash. I hate to be so direct about it, but really that's what these local businesses need. And if they're still doing carry out and still trying to stay open, that to me is the best way to do it. Can school district move graduations? We were just talking about this. One of Bella's friends were here, who's a senior, and doesn't seem like they're going to have graduations. I don't know what you can do about that because we don't know what it's going to look like in June. And, again, big stadiums full of people or arenas full of people are not a good idea. And I know we still don't know what the temperature is going to do to this virus. If it goes through the summer, does it die down? If it looks anything like the Spanish flu of 1918, there was a huge roar back in the fall. So it was brutal in the spring, died down in the summer, and it actually killed more people in the fall than in the spring. So that is something when you're talking about moving the dates of stuff. So we're worried about school, we're worried about graduations, we're worried about football next year for and sports for the kids next year. So we just don't know how much is going to be. Will distribution be income based? Yeah, if you make $130,000 a year, your reimbursement, the cash influx is going to be a lot more. I think we can get it up to 8, 9, 10,000 maybe, and lower if you make 50 or 60 grand a year. And then obviously if you didn't make anything last year, I think there's maybe $1,000. So anyway, let's take a couple more questions here. I really appreciate everybody being on. We're getting a great response here. In-mail voting in November. I think there are going to be a lot of conversations between now and probably the next few months on how we're going to handle voting. And again, we got to see how bad this gets. We got to see what happens, and it's probably going to be up in the air. But I know, obviously in Ohio, it went right down to the wire where we thought we were going to vote, and then we weren't voting, and now here we are. Where we didn't vote. And again, I think we have to really prepare for the worst, and that may lead to mail voting from the mailbox. The workforce, that's part of the issue. Is the healthcare workforce is really being able to, understand how we continue to maintain service if things spike so high, how we are able to absorb it into the healthcare system. We talked about opening up North Side. I talked in Summit, they have several facilities they're talking about using as backup, again, using college dormitories for being able to quarantine people. And so part of the reason we are all stressing so much, reducing social contact, practicing social distancing, staying 3 to 6 feet away, sneezing into your shirt, not shaking hands, using hand wipes, using hand sanitizers, washing your hands, because that spike, the higher that spike goes, where people get the infection in a condensed period of time, that is what drives the stress into the healthcare system. That is what, weakens, for lack of a better word, the healthcare workforce, because there's so much stress and pressure put on it. And so we've all got to do our parts, and it's we've got an obligation. We've got an obligation here. The other piece is, when we're talking about businesses, we've got to make sure that we're talking about the capital necessary, because as businesses shut down, their suppliers start to shut down. And if we're going to be loaning money or getting money, we've got to try to reduce some of the pressure in financial stress. So when I'm looking at the payroll tax, not necessarily thinking it's a very good stimulus, but it could be a very big help to some of the businesses to not have to pay the payroll tax and be able to make sure that they're taking care of other things so that they can survive. So those are the kind of things we're talking about. Let's take a couple more questions. Postal employees, no more licking envelopes. Okay, there you go. How are the kiddos doing? They're doing okay. They get mad at us when we don't let them run around as much as they want, and keeping them, close to home, and, they go over to their friend's house, but we just make sure there's just a few friends there, and anybody who walks in the house, they get the Purell hand sanitizer treatment. And so they're doing okay though, and we've got little projects for them. My wife got them working a little bit. Real small businesses, mom and pop shop owners, absolutely. Mom and pop shops, family businesses, small businesses. My main focus here, because I don't want them to fall through the cracks where we're talking about, the banks or the airlines or the cruise ship industry, or we're talking about individuals, and we're letting the small business people fall through the cracks. You have my word. Most of my friends, are small business owners. All the restaurants that we go to and the bars we go to and the people we support here locally are small business people. So you got my word that we will not let them fall through the cracks. All right. Well, listen, please remember, we'll do this again in a few days. I want to make sure that we are all we're all staying in touch. So I just want to let everybody know, please be safe. Again, the social distancing is real, and we want to make sure that we're doing every single thing we can. They're saying that this is really one of the most important weeks for us to be able to reduce the number, reduce that spike, is going to happen this week and in the next maybe 10 days. So we've got to do everything we can. Please, I know your kids are bugging you to go out. We've got to keep our kids at home to the extent we can. We've got to stay home the best we can. Like churches and all, we can't do this anymore. We've got to be really, really safe. And what we've, telling our kids too, there are now 2-year-olds that are getting sick. There are young people who are getting sick. There are 40-year-olds who are getting sick. So make sure everybody's doing their job, doing their civic duty to keep everybody else safe and keep that spike from going up. So I'll be back in a few days. Hope you all are hanging in there, doing well. Please feel free to contact us in our office on social media. We have a press conference tomorrow that we're doing in Youngstown with some of the public health officials and people from local hospitals, and we'll be updating on local conditions. I think I'll be on WFMJ tomorrow night. They're doing an hour-long series, so I'll be there, and then I'm heading out to western part of my district to meet with some folks in Summit County in the next day or two, and just really trying to balance, want to be there for people, staying in contact, but also not wanting to get into the way of what people are doing. So anyway, love you guys. Take care. And again, be safe. Practice social distancing. All right. Take care.